Hello and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. I'm coming to you from the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. It's been quite a day over here, a matter of great concern that there were air raid warnings which were sounded. Now these are sounded a couple of times every day, but I heard them for the first time today when I was in central Lviv. Now this is the one part of Ukraine which has thus far been untouched, but there is a real worry that this beautiful city could be attacked by Russian forces as well. To prepare themselves, people over here rely on bunkers, many of which have been constructed several centuries ago. Even uptown cafeterias and shops actually have bunkers attached to them. I'm going to go in and show you what I'm talking about. Okay. So as you can see over here, this is a cafeteria. It serves food, it serves coffee, and it's quite uptown. There's nice music playing. But attached to any number of these cafeterias are ancient bunkers, and this gives people over here a sense of reassurance that if things actually go wrong, they can actually get into these bunkers. Now this is quite the experience, so walk down with me. So below this fancy cafeteria is this flight of stairs, and as you can see, old bricks all along the wall. This goes down, and in fact 2 odd floors, as you will see, and it's quite deep. It's at least 20 to 30 feet under the ground as we keep going down. And knowing that they might actually have to be over here for a long period of time, things have been set up in a fairly interesting manner. Let's take a look. So I'm going to keep going, and this winds itself down even further, and then there are these ancient tunnels which you walk through. It's sort of dark over here. There are various entrances, buildings in this building. That's a bathroom, I think, over there. And then you can actually enter here, and this looks like some sort of a dive, but where people might actually have parties or something of that sort. But this is where people would actually stay. You know, they've got these beds which have been laid out over here, mattresses which have been laid out over here. There are cushions as well, and then there is another part over here, again a place where people can come down to and people can sleep. Now all of these areas actually also have an exit, an emergency exit going out. So we're going to actually walk to see if there is a way out of this bunker as well. In fact, it's a storeroom which can also be used, but this storeroom has several refrigerators where food and liquids can be stocked. And so there you have it, a quick look at what a bunker in Lviv, in an uptown part of this city, actually looks like. Well, we woke up to the news this morning of a Russian attack on the largest nuclear reactor in all of Europe. It lies in Ukraine. And the big worry for citizens over here is that how far is Putin willing to go to push the ante? Because the destruction of a single reactor, and there are apparently 6 reactors in this particular nuclear plant, would be many times what happened during Chernobyl. Remember, Chernobyl is in Ukraine as well. And the memory of Chernobyl is one which people over here haven't forgotten about at all. I'm joined by 3 young people over here in the city of Lviv to give us their thoughts about what's happening around them. Thanks very much for being with us. Firstly, tell me your name.
I'm Maria.
And Maria, you would have heard about this attack on this nuclear reactor. I mean, how frightening is it? Because you've had Chernobyl in the past. That memory has not gone away.
Now the citizens of Ukraine are definitely terrified. We never thought that would happen again. We still have memories of our relatives who actually whose health was badly influenced by that, and people were just literally dying. Now, if it happens, then that will be the catastrophe not only for Ukraine. That's how Ukraine will be actually devastated, but for the whole Europe.
When you sort of woke up and read the news or heard the news about this nuclear reactor, the attack, what was going on in your own mind?
So I was shocked when I saw it. I saw it at night and 2 a.m. So it was like what's happening. I don't understand how it's possible to do such things. So it was not chaotic attack, was target on this nuclear, and it will be strategy for all over the world. Unbelievable.
That's what he looked. I mean, I think that he just sort of took the words out of my mouth. But I think this goes to show that Putin will not stop at anything. If he's willing to target nuclear reactors, fortunately, it's safe for the Putin, and I think that needs to be reiterated. But it just goes to show that he's willing to do anything.
Yes, exactly. And this event has brought everyone closer to believe, yeah, that like a nuclear war with the nuclear bombs is very much possible. I mean, if he goes to this length to, like that, to purposely target the reactor, then we don't know what to expect anymore. I don't think that any continent is safe anymore from, the government. From
You know, how do you continue your normal life? You know what's happening in the rest of your country. Over here, there are air raid sirens. I heard them myself this morning. Is there that constant sense of tension, of not knowing what's going to happen? Lviv has not been touched so far, but are you worried that they may attack Lviv as well?
Sure, we are absolutely intense after this horrible night. We not know what to expect.
Yep.
And that not knowing up,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
we are as far as trained, especially our parents, relatives, they they know that anything may happen.
And what are your plans if something does happen? If there is an attack on Lviv, would you stay on over here? Would you try and leave?
We will still here, like to helping our military forces. We are organizing volunteers, preparing the net, and we'll continue to do it and help our.
Well, I'm joined now by Jyoti Hayat, and Jyoti joins us from Kyiv. Jyoti, great that you could be with us today. Give us a sense of what's happening in Kyiv today.
Well, right now, about 5 minutes ago, the sirens went off, and this is after 3 very loud explosions. Hearing just this, it sounded like right here in Kyiv. It's on the perimeter of Kyiv. We've been told to come down into the shelter, so that's where I am, down in one of the metro bomb shelters. And you can see here behind me that families are already setting up for tonight. Our curfew is at 7 o'clock. So just in that hour and a half, this place is really going to fill up. But some people just don't leave. So for example, if you can see people behind me here, they've got their puppy, they're playing with their puppy, and they've made a makeshift home basically down here with flowers and pillows and everything. So this is day 9 of this invasion, and virtually people have moved into metro stations all over Kyiv. So this is what's happening on the ground right now. People are sort of hunkering in for the night. And due to these loud explosions all this afternoon, there's a lot of worry, but there's been a lot of worry for, the past 9 days. So there's really great hope here also that there is going to be some sort of that Ukraine and Ukraine's fighters, their civilian fighters, are going to be able to protect the civilians here in this city. So down on the ground, it's people hunkering in for the night and just waiting to see what happens next, because anything could happen next.
Right. Well, I'm just going to go back to you. We lost your audio for half a second. The question which I asked was, what are you going to do? What are your plans if there is an attack on Lviv?
So we are planning to stay over here to help our military forces, to continue prepare volunteer help and fighting for our city.
Right. No matter what it takes, you're willing to stay on?
No matter.
No matter what it takes. All right. Well, earlier on in the day, I spoke to someone who was actually evacuated from Chernobyl when he was just 5 years old. And the thought that there could be, another nuclear catastrophe is a real worry among people over here. Let's listen in to what Ivan told me earlier today. Well, the situation over here is fairly tense in the city of Lviv. Just in the last couple of hours, in fact, the last couple of minutes, we've heard a couple of air raid warnings. There's also a day in which news is there of Russia having captured a nuclear power plant, but not before it actually fired on that area. And that's really worrying for people in this country because remember, Chernobyl was here as well. I'm joined by Ivan, and what is your name, sir?
Taras.
Taras. And Taras has been helping refugees, but Ivan has an interesting story to tell. He was actually 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
When you were evacuated from Chernobyl.
Yes, so that was the first time when I was 5 I saw the tanks on the streets. I lived in Pripyat near Chernobyl, and today I see the tanks again. And
the news of this nuclear...
Yes, and they're in Chernobyl and they're in Energograd, and this is scary, really scary, because they're firing rockets there, and everything can go really bad, bad.
Yeah.
Try everything to stop them.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. And you've been helping refugees, right? Go to the border, or what have you been doing?
Yeah, they escaped from Kharkov because the city is really destroyed at the moment, and they try to reach local city in our district. I mean in Lviv district, and they stayed for the night in my apartment this night, and then continue to their way. And the point is that they asked me how to get there, and when it was in peaceful time, it was everything clear how to which kind of transport to choose, what time. But now everything is unclear. You don't know even if there is some connection is present or not, and it's like old times, like several ages ago.
Yeah, no, I get that point. Ivan, give us an idea of your own family, what you've been seeing over here. Is there a worry that you want to evacuate yourself? Your family wants to evacuate because you see what's happening around you in your own country.
Yeah. Yeah, we have relatives in Poland, but maybe it will be safer there for children and my wife. But I'm staying here because that's my country, that's my land. So I'm gonna stay, and we'll see what happens. We pray God that nothing bad happens. If something happens to nuclear plants, we're gonna be, I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. What's gonna happen?
Yeah. Well, there you have it, two voices over here in the center of Lviv, just very close to the train station, lots of people going in and out, but these air raid sirens are in fact sounding, and that's a cause of great concern. I'm joined by Captain James Fennell. He's the former Director of Intelligence of the United States Navy's Pacific Fleet. Lesia Vasilenko is an MP here in Ukraine, and Olena Tregyov is the Secretary General of Ukraine's Anti-Corruption Bureau. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. Captain Fennell, let me come to you first. What is the signal that Vladimir Putin is trying to send by attacking, of all things, a nuclear power plant?
He's signaling that he's very serious about his intentions to take over Ukraine. That's the signal that he thinks that he's sending. But the message that's being received by the world is that he is a very dangerous individual that would be conducting these kind of operations. His foreign minister has already talked about if there was a World War III that Russia would use nuclear weapons. And so we're seeing extreme rhetoric and now actions around nuclear facilities that threaten not just the lives of many, many in Ukraine, but now actually threaten the rest of Europe. And this is a very dangerous escalation, and one that could escalate this into something much, much worse.
Captain Fennell, it's almost difficult to be asking this question because just a few months back or a few weeks back, people would have thought it's preposterous. But do you really believe that we are headed to something bigger than this conflict just in Ukraine, that Putin is trying to up the ante to an extent where there could be war in Europe.
Yes, I wouldn't have believed it either. I think there are many, many people that would like to keep this from escalating out of control. But the reality is that when these kinds of actions happen, there will be voices in Europe that will call for action, and voices in America that will call for action, and voices around the world. And so I think this is actually, it's hard to comprehend that this is something that Putin's actually pushing. I already read this today that the Spanish foreign minister said that NATO would actually take up consideration of a no-fly zone. Even though the General Secretary of NATO has said that they would not, there are the calls coming for this kind of ramping up. And if they start flying in a no-fly zone over the Ukraine, Putin will do something else. And so we need to be very, very careful. This is a very dangerous time in human history.
Do you believe, Captain Fennell, that this is the most dangerous time in human history since some of the worst moments of the Cold War?
Yeah, I was born in November 1962. And the month before I was born, there was a similar crisis off the shores of the United States in Cuba with the missile crisis there. And the leaders of those nations, we learned many years later on both sides, were, seriously going through their checklist for what they do for the employment of nuclear weapons. And I suspect that that's happening now in the Pentagon and in Moscow and other places in the European capitals where they have tactical nuclear weapons. And so it is a very, very dangerous time. And it's a time for cool, calm, collected action. And I know that our friends in the Ukraine are being slaughtered. And so we have to take that into account as well. But when you start talking about nuclear weapons, it's very dangerous.
Lesya Vasilenko, do you believe that, from a Ukrainian standpoint, the attack on power facilities is an attempt at controlling Ukraine? Whoever controls electricity generation and power generation, that represents a more immediate threat, a bigger threat to trying to control Ukraine. Is that what Russia is trying to do now?
Russia is attacking Ukraine on all fronts, and getting hold of strategic infrastructure is, of course, a strategic aim of the armed forces of Russia. What they are doing is they are trying to control the civilian population and to keep them in terror by depriving them in such a form of water, of electricity, of heat. The thing to understand that 52% of the Ukrainian energy mix is actually made up of nuclear energy. We have 5 nuclear power plants across Ukraine, and these power plants have in total 15 nuclear reactors. So controlling them means that Putin and his armed forces would have a total control over the very bare necessities of the civilian population of Ukraine. And I think that Putin will not stop at anything, because he is already known to have sent directions to shell children's kindergartens, schools, hospitals, residential blocks of buildings. So there's nothing stopping him from switching off power supplies and water supplies of the civilian population. This is a monster we're dealing with.
Olena Tregub, the world and certainly Ukraine hopes that, peace process, the peace talks will progress. There have been a couple of rounds of talks. In the last round, there was an acceptance of humanitarian corridors being opened up. But beyond that, do you realistically see anything more happening?
No, I absolutely see no progress.
Humanitarian corridors that...
Olena Tregub, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you. I see absolutely no progress in those peace talks. Humanitarian corridors is a very questionable idea. Ukrainian people would not trust Putin to go into those corridors, because it's probably where, they will be exposed to being shot. Moreover, I'm sure that Russia will use these corridors to bring more equipment and troops and water and food for their own soldiers. So no, there is absolutely no progress because Putin doesn't want to negotiate. He wants to erase Ukraine as independent free nation from the earth. And we, of course, don't agree to die. and there's no progress. And moreover, I want to mention that, yes, NATO is careful. NATO is afraid to introduce no-fly zone because it may escalate into war with NATO. But think about it. If NATO is not active enough, if NATO does not provide air defense for our sky, air defense systems, like Britain has a good system, Norway has good system, many countries can transfer their systems, equipment to us, fighter jets. If NATO doesn't do any of that, if Putin takes over Ukraine, do you think the war will be over? Absolutely not. It will get out of control. 40 million people all willing to fight. Nuclear disaster can be even closer than it is right now.
Yeah. Captain Fenella, a final word to you. A lot has been spoken about Ukraine's defense, and we've seen the Russian forces take massive hits. But it seems that Putin is pushing his forces into a siege sort of scenario where they lay siege to the big Ukrainian cities. Is this, in terms of Ukraine, something that's going to go on now for several months?
I think there's a definite possibility that this could go on much longer, given what you've heard from our Ukrainian guests and their will and determination to fight back, which I applaud. So Putin doesn't seem to be right now ready to take the next step to where he just does wholesale bombardment like he did in Grozny or in Syria. We hope that he doesn't. And if he doesn't take that step, then this could go on much longer in terms of the siege mentality, which makes it very important for NATO and U.S. forces and other forces around the world to provide food, shelter, and the kind of armaments that they need to be able to continue to engage this conflict. But it could go on for quite some time, especially as it gets warmer and the tanks are not going to be as effective operating off the major road systems.
All right, but I'd like to thank all three of you very much for joining us. I must confess, I'm in a city which feels like any other modern European city, Lviv. It's untouched so far, and people over here certainly pray that it remains untouched. But it's just 10 kilometers, it's just a short distance away from the border with Poland. If this city is attacked, then, the war itself comes that much closer to NATO, and that remains a huge worry. I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us.